Welcome to Passive Aggressive Income. This program may contain strong language. The content may not be suitable for audiences under the age of 17. We understand many of our listeners may not agree with all of our personal viewpoints. We in no way, shape, or form mean to be offensive to anyone. Our show notes will provide all of our source material included for each episode. Now let's get passive aggressive.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Passive Aggressive Income. We are your hosts, Lexi and Mims, and this week I'm super excited to have a very special guest on, Anna Krueger, or Fan of Hoop if you're familiar with her Instagram. Anna is such a fun, amazing person. She's a flow artist specializing in hoops and fans, a performer, a teacher, health advocate, all of the things. So thank you for coming on, Anna.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Anna and I met back in like 2016 or 2017 because we both went to the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh. We had completely different like majors, didn't have any classes together, but we both went to a flow arts group that was through the university that a couple of us who like to hoop and spin poi and all that kind of stuff would meet together like on a weekly basis and at the rec center at the gym. And since then, we've kind of just kept in touch over Instagram through everything that life has thrown at us.
Yeah, that was so much fun. And honestly, I still do stuff like that today where I get together with a group of people and just flow to music and catch a vibe together, enjoy ourselves. That's really a fun memory to have, thinking back that I used to do that and I still do that today.
Yeah, getting a group of people like that together where you can all just like dance and have fun is that was like some of my favorite memories from when I went to UWO. And it's awesome that you've been able to take that and continue it over the next couple of years and even start making some money from it too.
Totally.
So speaking of flow arts then, how did you get into like hooping and fans and what are some of your favorite props?
So I got into hooping when I saw someone fire hooping in a backyard.
Ooh.
And I was just so mesmerized by what they were doing.
Mhm.
She was just doing like waist tubing on fire, and I thought like I could probably do that. Like this looks like something I could maybe do. So I went to the Menards home improvement store, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with because
Oh
you do
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
renovations and stuff. And I bought the plumbing tubing and electrical tape, and I made a big old hula hoop and just got to hula hooping. And I think it was about like 1 month later that I started fire hooping
Wow.
because a group of people would get together at a park and just fire hoop at the park, which is super sketchy. And I don't recommend doing that at all. But I jumped right into fire hooping, and now I do single hoop, double hoop, juggling, and fans. Those are
Wow.
my big flow arts props that I'm into.
Yeah, that's a very dynamic list of props because I like, I mean, so you were the person who introduced me to fire hooping. The very first, and I think like one of the only couple times that I've ever done it was with you with your fire hoop. But
Oh, cool.
yeah, I think back in my yard. And I have tried to use like double hoops or multi props, and like nothing works for me, a single hoop. So I am so impressed by all of the things that you do.
Oh, thanks. I practice a lot, so it's
Yeah.
definitely not natural skill. It's just a lot of hours training,
hmm
what it comes down to.
So, Anna, how did you get into performing?
So my friends hit me up one night and were like, "Hey, there's the street market going on downtown Appleton. Do you want to come and spin fire there?" And it was kind of the same group of friends that were spinning fire at the park. And so I was like, "Sure, I'll be there." So I came with my fire hoop, and the event was called the Bazaar After Dark. They've
Yeah.
since renamed it. But we just set up shop in the middle of the street, in the middle of the market, and took turns spinning fire for tips. And people were super receptive to it. Like we had this giant ass crowd around us, and we just like showed up and did the thing. And it was incredible. I think we all came out with like $100 or $200 each that
Wow.
night,
Nice.
which was huge.
Yeah.
And especially for like not being a performer, just getting your feet wet and seeing what that felt like was exhilarating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what drew me into it, was just kind of happening upon it. I didn't decide one day I want to be a performer. It just sort of happened.
Yeah, so you did that for tips. Is that typically like how gigs for you go now, several years later, or what was like the first time you actually got paid for a gig and like what kind of impact did that have on you?
Yeah, so now gigs, like sometimes I get tips, sometimes I don't. Obviously, if people want a tip, that's awesome. I love cash in hand. But usually I'm now getting paid for like booked gigs where there's like a contract and an invoice set out ahead of time. My first paid gig was a burlesque variety show at the Draw
Wow.
in Appleton. It's like this really tiny building. I think they've since renovated it. There were maybe like 30 people in the audience. I remember there was this chick doing like this metal underwear like chainsaw act where she had like this grinder on her underwear
Oh
and
my
like the
God.
sparks were flying all over.
Wow.
Turns out that's a really common variety act, but I had like never seen it before. But that was my first gig, my first paid gig. And I remember submitting the audition video and feeling like I had no chance whatsoever at getting in, and being really surprised when I was invited to perform there. Like, I didn't know what a green room was. I didn't know how to do my makeup. Hey, my now friend Shay, who's a photographer, was doing portrait photos, and I remember being like super nervous in front of the camera, like even taking a portrait photo with her, didn't know how to act. Um, and then the whole time I was on stage, it just like went by in the blink of an eye. I had no idea what happened. I was so nervous. I have the video from that first performance actually, and you can hear the crowd cheering, like everyone liked it. But the experience for me was so nerve-wracking that I just
Mm.
didn't even absorb what the hell was happening.
Yeah, I
Um,
wonder if that was for the best though. I think like at least for me when I get really nervous about something and if I think back and it all like goes by in a blur, I'm like, well, that must have went well, right? Because there's nothing that's like sticking out to me that was horrible.
Yeah.
yeah.
What has been your favorite gig to date?
My favorite gig to date, man, they're all good for different reasons. Um, Probably this past summer, I had a gig at the Brewers Stadium, which is an
Oh,
MLB stadium in Milwaukee. And I got booked for it the day before the gig. And it
Wow.
was a Saturday. So thankfully I was like available. And it was a George Strait concert, who's a country music artist. And so I figured I would be like roaming among the masses and just hula hooping like with day hoops and stuff like that. But I got there and I quickly realized that there were several security checkpoints, and I was parked next to the tour buses. And then I got escorted in a golf cart with like this George Strait name tag that I had to have on my person at all times or I would get kicked out.
Oh my gosh.
Um, right? And they brought us to this tiny room underneath the stadium. And in the room, there was a face painter and like an inflatable kids jump house thingy. And so it was basically like my friends and I who were also performing in that little room. And then slowly we realized that we were hired to perform for the children of the touring artists.
oh,
Wow.
So it was like George Strait, Chris Stapleton, and Little Big Town. Their families were like coming in and out of this room with their kids. And
So
basically,
cool.
there's like a boatload of entertainment for like 3 kids at a time, plus like 5 nannies.
oh, wow.
Yeah,
What an experience.
it was really, really fun. And I also taught a kid, I was teaching a kid how to juggle, and I later realized that it was George Strait's grandson and George Strait Jr., which is his son. So I like had fun like meeting them and juggling with them. And then at the end of the gig, all of the Milwaukee Brewer like weenies, I think they're called. Mims, I don't know if you're a sports person.
I am not.
Okay. They have like these big sausages at the Brewer
Oh,
Stadium that they have like wiener races or
Oh
whatever.
my gosh. I've heard
And
of
so
this, yes.
basically, it's like a person in this giant costume that it's a different variety of a Wisconsin sausage.
oh wow.
So we got to have a dance party in that room with like 7 different sausages.
I love that. That's so
Amazing.
Wisconsin, I feel like.
Totally.
Oh, that's funny. So what are some of your like best tips for like balancing the things that you have as like, your day job and being a performer and teaching hoop classes and like all of the things you have going on in life? How do you manage that?
So it's a lot. Honestly, it is a lot. And I think just, first of all, just like staying grateful for the opportunity that we have. I know you both get it as like women and having all of the hustles and the day jobs and the side hustles and everything. Just staying positive and grateful for all of the opportunity is massively helpful because it's so easy to get down on yourself or like feel overwhelmed.
Hmm.
So just
Yeah.
kind of like shutting that down, first of all. And then like schedules and lists are massively helpful. I really like having a morning exercise routine because it gets my mind right in the morning when it most matters. So I've been like hitting the gym in the morning, and then I usually follow that with some type of like brings me joy type of activity.
Nice.
So for me, that's like writing or reading, going for a walk, dancing, shit like that, whatever I feel like.
Hmm.
Um, but as far as like keeping all the hustles on track, I have 2 whiteboards. And so basically, one whiteboard is for the side hustles, which is flow arts. And then the other whiteboard is for my day to day tasks and what needs to get done outside of that.
I love that you said keeping a positive attitude because I feel like a lot of people don't even consider that as being like a tool for them to use. So that's really awesome that you use that to your advantage, just keeping your attitude positive and not trying to not be overwhelmed, even though it's really easy to let yourself become overwhelmed. So good for you.
Hell yeah. Well, I'm sure you guys get it too. Like
Oh, yeah.
you
Yeah.
just have to be positive with it. Like, oh, I just worked all week and now I have gigs both days on the weekend and I taught a hoop class. It's like that's something I get to do, not something I have to do, and it will slow down.
Yeah,
I love
exactly.
that. How has social media played a role in your success?
So this past summer, I got to perform at Electric Forest
Ooh.
and they reposted my Instagram. So I got a ton more followers just from that one interaction.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And since then, I decided to just really take it and run with it. And I built so many networking connections through social media, especially with flow arts being such a niche hobby. It's a lot easier to connect with fellow hoopers over the internet. So I've really tried to maximize it as much as possible. I've definitely gotten gigs from it. People have signed up for hoop classes from social media. It's, I mean, a tool that anybody should tap into if they're trying to start a business or a side hustle.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing I've noticed is like watching your Instagram grow over the past few years since the Electric Forest video and just seeing like I still am connected with a whole bunch of people that like I would talk to on Instagram when I was like hooping more regularly and I would see like you and another person. I'm like, wait, you guys know each other? Like I met this person on the internet like 5 years ago and now you're teaching hoop classes together. And yeah, it's really cool to see how like flow arts can connect people.
Totally. And I've been to a few flow arts festivals, and it's really fun to meet internet people in person.
Yeah.
Like that is just a blast. It's like, wow, how many hours of my life have I spent just watching you on my phone? And now here you are in real life.
Right. Yeah, and one thing that I really like that you said is that once you've sort of found like the success with like gaining a whole bunch of new followers since that event, you just decided to run with it. And I know that like running with it, being like, posting who you are authentically on the internet can be kind of scary and comes with like a level of discomfort when you're just, dancing around in the morning and you post that to your story and a bunch of people see it. Can you talk about working through some of that discomfort?
Definitely. When I first started performing, I was not confident really at all. And then I just decided to start posting, like you say, Lexi, like dancing in the morning. And it wasn't easy at first, but people were so kind. And literally no one has been judgmental.
Wow.
So I quickly realized like it's okay to just post something that feels good. I don't necessarily need to be good at the said thing, but I can still put it out here for the world to see. And by doing that, I think that maybe other people will then feel comfortable sharing different aspects of their life or even trying something new like hula hooping or flow arts.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. And
Yeah.
and another thing that I've noticed, like with, sort of your morning routine with like dancing around and, doing all the things that you do is that you're a really big advocate for health. So like moving your body and eating good food. Can you talk about, and I know you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but can you talk about how you've been able to stick with those health routines?
Totally. So I don't think I could do the things that I do without having the health routines in place because exercise is so huge for my mental health. Like, mentally, I do not compute unless I'm moving my body and eating whole foods. So it's sort of like a dedication that I made for myself. And I got really lucky because I quit teaching public school in June of this last year, 2023. And I didn't start my new 9 to 5 job until January of this year, 2024.
Wow.
So I had about 6 months where I was just living from savings and from gig work. And that gave me a period of time to really dedicate to my health and to adopting a daily exercise routine. So in July, I started working out every day, making it a priority. I would say if you're someone who wants to get into exercise or any health routine, pick something that you like.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you hate it, you're never gonna fucking do it.
Yeah.
You're gonna dread it.
Yeah.
So like for me in the beginning, that was like walking or running outside because I'm a huge nature person.
Hmm.
And that really helped. And then also just telling myself, like, Anna, you like this. This is fun for you.
Yeah, like
Even if
willing
it's a
yourself to
lot.
enjoy.
Yep, exactly.
That definitely is like a thing that people practice as far as getting them to do what's good for your body when you don't want to, like cold showers. Like nobody really likes doing it, but are you are in charge of your mind. So if you tell yourself, "Hey, this is good for you, you're gonna like it," then your body will respond accordingly. So I really like that you said that too.
Yeah, cold showers is something that I don't fuck with.
Me either.
It's not easy.
Do you take cold showers?
I I do not. I'm not going to give myself that much credit. What I do is I take my hot showers because I'm a girl and I feel like girls all do that.
Yeah.
But then towards the end, I like turn the knob like inch by inch, like colder and colder. And I just sit there and like the last like 5 to 10 seconds, I put it like full, like cold. And I force myself to stand there underneath it. So I mean, not the whole shower, but it still doesn't, it's not pleasant, you know?
Yeah. Takes like the mental strength.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's rough. I'll go for a nice lake swim, but a cold shower or like an ice bath is a hard no for me.
I feel like a lake swim would be almost as cold, maybe. But I don't know. I don't do lake swims, so I don't know.
Depends on the time of year.
Yeah, yeah.
True.
So, what are some of your goals over the next 5 years? Where do you envision yourself in the future with flow arts?
So I don't really see myself being a full-time performer with flow arts, just because I value financial independence so much.
Mm.
And to really be a serious flow artist, and I mean serious, like full-time job, you really have to have a bunch of different skill sets that are usually around like aerial arts, which is where, if your guests aren't familiar, it's like where you're up in the air on an apparatus like silks or lyra or that kind of thing. Something like what Grace Good is doing. She was just on America's Got Talent.
Hmm.
I don't know if you're familiar, Lexi, I see you nodding your head, like maybe you've seen
I've
her.
seen a couple clips. Hmm.
Yeah. So I want to just continue performing and doing bigger and bigger acts and fitting into my life as much as I can. I've never felt more alive than when I do performing. And I know that sounds cliche as fuck, but it lights me up. So more performing in the next 5 years is definitely one of my many goals.
Yeah, I think it's nice to have something that you can do for fun that like also brings you money, but it doesn't have to be the main source of income because it's not like you're relying on it. And
Mm.
when you rely on a job, it kind of like to some degree can take the fun out of it. And so I love that it's kind of like up to you where you can decide how much or how little you can fit into your life. And like it does make you feel alive.
Totally. I'm so glad you brought that up because I could train aerial arts and other apparatuses so that I could make it a full-time job, but I don't really want to. I really love fans and I really love hoops and it brings me a lot of joy. So I want to keep it in that space.
Yeah, well said. So to switch gears here a little bit, I know that you've done some like home renovations in the past. Do you have any real estate goals going forward?
I sure do.
All right.
So, um, I renovated and sold a house in my past life. And so my next real estate goal is to buy a midterm rental or a duplex. I have not yet decided. But where I live in Madison, Wisconsin, there's a really good market for MTRs because of the hospitals.
Hmm.
So that's kind of on the horizon. It's not the best time to buy right now, from what
Right.
I gather. So I'm just kind of riding it out and waiting for either the right deal or the right time. But yes, I definitely want like to have some rental properties under my belt. I would like to do less renovating because that's a lot
Oh,
of
I feel
time.
you.
That is a whole lot of time.
It is.
So,
Yeah, real estate is a whole beast on its own. You're gonna have to have time slotted out for that.
yes, indeed. And so I figure if I can have time just for the back end stuff and not
Hmm.
renovations, that'll be a bit more manageable in my life.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
for sure.
sure. You've come to the right place with being on this podcast, and you know that you can always reach out to both me or Mims as far as any real estate questions, and especially with midterm rentals. It's been something
Hmm.
that I've been doing for the past couple years, and that's worked out. So we can be resources for you whenever you take that step into that journey.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, I really enjoyed listening to your podcast. In fact, I'll listen to it sometimes when I'm on runs in nature. I'm just like listening to you two talking while I'm jogging. It's really nice.
I love
Thank
that.
you.
All right, so we got one last question for you. What advice would you give to people who are interested in making money from their passions but don't know where to start?
I would say figure out what you want your product to look like. So find a mentor, have a vision for what you want it to be like, and then go for it. Put yourself out there, try to get the gig, try to get your product in a store. Don't have expectations that it's just going to take off all at once because these things will build over time in very small steps, and that's okay. Keep going. But the first thing is just figure out what you want your product to look like and go from there. Don't give up.
Yeah, just get started.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah, because I've had times where I wanted to give up because my projects don't take off right away or I don't get a lot of traction. But like you have been doing flow art and then all of a sudden you started popping off because of the electric forest. And if you quit at one point before that happened, then you wouldn't have gotten the exposure. So I really love that you brought that up and that you have lived it yourself.
Exactly. I was hooping and doing flow arts for 9 years
Wow.
before I really started popping off, as you say.
Yeah.
And so I had gigs leading up to that,
Mhm.
but it just has been even more this past year. And 9 years is a long freaking time to work at something before it really pops off.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I think
absolutely.
I think if I would have had more of like a vision of what I wanted my product to look like in the beginning, I would have got a lot further a lot quicker. But
Mm,
there's no timeline on anyone's journey.
so true. I love that.
Yeah, that's good advice. And when you have something that you've been doing for, 9 years, like almost a decade, you have to be passionate about it too. And that's where it's like a win-win situation where you're passionate and you love doing this thing, but you can also make some money from it too. Well, thanks so much for joining us today, Anna. It was so fun talking with you and catching up, and we really appreciate you taking some time to be on our podcast. And for our listeners, we will make sure to have links to Anna's socials and her website in our show notes. So make sure to check her out and show her some love.
Thank you, Mims and Lexi, so much for having me. The pleasure is all mine.
Thank you so
And
much.
if you're listening today and you want to chit chat about flow arts, hit me up on Insta.
Yes.
Yes, I'm that bitch.
You deserve to be that bitch.
Yes, you
That's why
do.
you're here. All right. Thank you guys for listening, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye. Passive Aggressive Income was written, recorded, edited, and produced by co-hosts and creators Mims and Lexi. We truly want to thank our listeners, collaborators, friends, and family that continuously support us for all the love we receive. If you enjoy our show, please give us a glowing rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Also, follow us on Facebook and Instagram to see what we are up to. For any inquiries, please email passiveaggressiveincome2023@gmail.com. Episodes of Passive Aggressive Income are available wherever you listen to podcasts, so make sure to subscribe and like us on your favorite streaming platform.